On a quiet return to his childhood neighborhood, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson offers help to an elderly woman struggling with groceries, only to realize she was the woman who raised him. But her warm smile hides a painful truth, and what he discovers next will change everything. The late afternoon sun spilled golden light over the cracked sidewalks of Hayward, California. It was one of those sleepy weekdays where the world seemed to hold its breath. Dwayne Johnson leaned against the side of a rented black SUV, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the faded charm of the neighborhood he hadn't set foot in for over 2 decades. There was something different about coming home. Not the place, necessarily, but the gravity it held. The scent of warm asphalt and jasmine, the distant bark of a dog behind a rusting gate. The hum of nostalgia buzzed beneath his skin. He had just wrapped a whirlwind press tour in LA and decided, on a whim, to visit his old neighborhood before heading back to Miami. No entourage, no cameras, just him, the street he once played ball on, and a quietly gnawing curiosity about the past he'd long buried beneath global fame and ironclad schedules. He took a slow stroll down Elmont Avenue, nodding at the occasional passerby who double-taked, trying to figure out if it was really him. It was quiet until a sound broke through the gentle drone of a distant lawnmower, a strained grunt, followed by the clatter of a paper bag spilling to the ground. Across the street, a petite woman in a blue cardigan and gray slacks stood frozen, a bag of groceries split open at her feet. Oranges rolled into the gutter. A carton of eggs oozed across the pavement like spilled sunlight. "Ma'am, you okay?" Dwayne called, jogging over instinctively. She turned with a startled blink, squinting up at him through bifocals. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, but her hands trembled slightly as she tried to pick up the mess. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause a scene," she said, flustered. "Hey, no scene. Let me help you," he said, already crouching down to gather the scattered produce. He handed her a lemon, then their hands brushed. That's when she paused. She stared at him, really stared. Her brows furrowed deeply. You're... She hesitated, voice shaky. "Dewey?" The name hit him like a body slam from the past. Only 3 people in his whole life ever called him that. Wait a minute. He looked at her closely now, really studying her face. The thin lines near her mouth, the softness of her voice, the kindness in her eyes. "Nana June," he said. Her eyes welled up, a hand covering her mouth. "My God," she whispered, tears springing forth without resistance. "You grew up." He couldn't believe it. Nana June, the woman who watched him every weekday afternoon when his mom worked triple shifts, who made him grilled cheese with the crusts cut off and let him watch pro wrestling even when his mom said no. The woman who sang him to sleep more nights than he could count. She was still here? Still working? His chest tightened as he took in the faded badge clipped to her shirt. June Peterson, courtesy associate, from a nearby supermarket. "What are you doing out here, Nana?" he asked gently. "Walking back from my shift." The bus broke. "Down," she said, waving off the concern. "It's just a little extra work, keeps me busy." "You're 83, he said, not as a question. 83 and blessed, she replied with a sad smile. "But life isn't as kind to everyone as it was to you, Dewey." The way she said it, softly like it wasn't meant to, hurt, still cut through him. He carried her groceries the rest of the way, walking slowly, silently, listening as she talked about the neighborhood, how it had changed, about people who left and never came back, about how she took on the supermarket job after her husband died. "Social Security only stretches so far," she said, almost laughing. But Dwayne wasn't laughing. He was looking at the peeling paint of her front porch, the rust on the gate, the way she struggled to step over the curb. He set the bags on her counter and looked around the tiny kitchen, exactly as he remembered it, but older now, tired. A single photo of him at age 9 still sat on the fridge. He had braces and ears too big for his head. "You kept that?" he asked. She smiled. "Always." And for a moment he didn't know what to say. The silence between them was thick, emotional, unspoken. Then his phone buzzed. A text from his publicist. "Red carpet event rescheduled for tonight. Are you en route?" He stared at the message, then turned the phone off. "Nana," he said, sitting down at her kitchen table, voice low, "can I ask you something personal?" She looked up. "How bad is it?" June hesitated, looked down at her hands. When she finally answered, her voice was barely audible. "I'm behind on the mortgage. Don't tell your mother. It'll just worry her." He felt it. An ache that wasn't just guilt, but fury too. How could someone who gave so much end up like this? "I had to let the heating go last winter. I stayed bundled up, no big deal. You know me." She chuckled, but her eyes glistened. He looked around again. The stove was old. The tap in the sink dripped. The house seemed like it was holding on, out of sheer willpower. His jaw tightened. "Nana, this isn't right." "Sweetheart, I'm not your responsibility," she said gently. "But you were mine when I was a kid," he replied. "And that counts for something." She tried to wave him off, but he stood up, pacing now, thoughts racing. This wasn't just about June. This was about everyone like her. People who built communities, held families together, only to be forgotten, left to scrape by. He glanced out the window, eyes narrowing as an idea began to take shape. "You ever heard of Project Groundwork?" he asked. She shook her head. "Good," he muttered, "because it doesn't exist yet. But it will." Her brows furrowed. "What are you talking about, Dewey?" He turned to her, fire in his eyes now. "I'm talking about changing the game. Not just for you, for every Nana out there getting left behind, but just as the resolve settled in him like a storm front. There was a knock at the door, 3 short raps, then silence. June blinked. "Nobody comes by this time of day." Duane frowned. He opened the door and froze. A man in a suit stood there, briefcase in hand. He looked at Duane, then past him. "I'm looking for a June Peterson," the man said coolly. "Regarding a foreclosure notice." Duane's fists clenched, and suddenly the stakes had changed. Duane stood in the doorway like a mountain, silent, unmoving, towering over the man in the pressed gray suit. The man looked up at him with a rehearsed professionalism, the kind reserved for delivering bad news without flinching. June stepped up beside Duane, her small frame almost lost behind him. "I'm June Peterson," she said softly, brushing invisible crumbs from her cardigan, as if dignity could be smoothed back into the moment. The man didn't blink. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm from Redwood Asset Management. I just need to have you sign an acknowledgement that we delivered the foreclosure notice in person. You're now inside the 60-day window before auction." He extended a clipboard with a pen clipped neatly to the top. His hand didn't shake. He'd done this before. Too many times, probably. June hesitated. "There must be some mistake. I spoke to someone from the bank. They said I could still make partial payments. They revoked that offer last week," the man said with bland efficiency. "The paperwork was filed 2 days ago." Duane's jaw was clenched so tight his molars ached. "You're serving an 83-year-old woman who's lived here for almost 60 years? His voice was calm, but dangerously so. The man didn't answer, just offered the clipboard again, eyes carefully avoiding Duane's. June's hand trembled as she reached for the pen. Duane caught her wrist gently. "Don't sign anything," he said. "Not yet. Dewey, this isn't your fight," she whispered. "The hell it isn't." The silence stretched. A soft breeze rustled the hedges by the porch, whispering through the thin screen door. Duane stared at the man for another moment, then took the clipboard, scanned the paperwork, and nodded once. "Leave your card." The man placed a business card on the porch rail without comment, then turned and walked down the steps, disappearing into a nondescript white sedan idling at the curb. Dwayne watched until the car rolled out of sight. Then he turned back to June. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. June stepped back inside, her shoulders drooping like the air had just been pulled out of her. "I didn't want anyone to worry," she said, her voice frayed. "I fell behind during COVID. Then the repairs piled up. Insurance dropped. Me. Every month's been a game of which bill not to pay." Her fingers toyed with the corner of a faded placemat. "I was embarrassed," she admitted. "I raised you to stand tall, to never beg. I guess some part of me thought if I just kept pushing through, maybe it'd fix itself." Dwayne sat across from her again at the little kitchen table. The linoleum beneath his elbows was cracked, yellowed with age. He let the moment breathe. "You didn't fail, Nana," he said finally. "The system did." She gave him a sad smile. "Systems never worked for folks like us. We just make do." Dwayne stared at the window where the sunlight filtered in slanted beams, catching dust motes in the air. That anger from earlier, it was still there, but it had cooled into something sharper. Intent. Purpose. "Nana," he said slowly, "I have money. I could pay off the house right now." She opened her mouth to protest, but he raised a hand. "Don't say no. Just listen. I could fix this for you with a phone call, but that's not enough. Because if you're going through this, I promise you, thousands of other women are too. Women who raised kids like me, who built communities, who got left behind." His voice dropped low, quiet, but resolute. "I'm not just gonna fix this house. I'm going to fix this problem." She blinked at him, unsure if she'd heard him right. He stood, pacing now, energy returning to his massive frame like coals stoked into flame. "A fund. No, more than that. A program, nationwide. We start with emergency relief, foreclosure stops, back rent assistance, but we expand. Housing renovations, grocery stipends, legal aid. I'll use my name to get the right people involved. Real partners. This isn't charity. It's justice." She looked at him with a mix of awe and worry. "That sounds like a big promise." He turned to face her. "I don't make promises I don't intend to keep." Just then, his phone buzzed again. Text from his manager. "You're trending again. TMZ says you're in Hayward. Calls are coming in. What's going on?" He didn't respond. Instead, he took a deep breath and looked down at his old photo still clinging to her fridge with a sun-faded magnet. "I'll get your mortgage sorted out tomorrow," he said, turning back to her. "And I'm staying here tonight. You got a guest room?" She laughed, really laughed, wiping her eyes as she stood. "Still smells like you left it," she said. He smiled. "I doubt that." She patted his arm. "Do we? Thank you." "I should have come back sooner," he said. "No," she whispered. "You came back exactly when you were needed." The warmth of the moment was interrupted by another buzz from his phone. This time, it rang, a call from his publicist. He silenced it, but it kept buzzing. Again and again. Finally, June nodded toward it. "You should take it," Dwayne answered, voice low. "Yeah? Dwayne, it's Claire. You need to see this. There's already a story out, a photo of you helping someone with groceries. It's gone viral. People are calling it the real rock moment. It's everywhere. You're being hailed as the most relatable star alive." He frowned. "That was 15 minutes ago." "Exactly," she said. "If we move fast, we can control the narrative. Do a feature. Maybe even bring her in. It's golden PR, Dwayne." He looked at June, who was rinsing off the crushed eggs in the sink, her back turned. "This isn't PR," he said. "Everything is PR," Claire replied coolly. "But this could be something bigger if you let it. People are hungry for hope." He ended the call. The gears in his head were already spinning. If the story was out, Then maybe he didn't have to wait. Maybe he could use the attention to light the fire now. He pulled out his notes app and started drafting something. A post, a mission, a rally cry. But before he could hit record, June turned around and asked, "You staying for dinner?" He looked up from the phone, grounded again. "You still make those cinnamon pork chops?" Her eyes twinkled. "Only for my favorite wrestler." And as the smell of sizzling butter began to fill the kitchen, and dusk painted the sky outside in purples and golds, a seed of change had already taken root, one that would spread far beyond this kitchen. But just as he was about to sit back down, June's landline rang. She picked it up, listening. Her face paled. She held the phone out, her voice quiet. "It's the bank. They're calling to schedule the first walkthrough for the foreclosure auction." Dwayne took the phone. "Hello?" A voice answered. Confused. Curt. "Yes, we're trying to confirm access to the property. Can you identify yourself?" Dwayne smiled coldly. "I'm the reason you're going to cancel that auction." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a brief, almost imperceptible hesitation. The kind that hung heavy in the air when someone suddenly realized the person they were speaking to wasn't who they expected. Dwayne let the silence stretch a second longer before speaking again, voice calm, but carrying that unmistakable weight that made audiences hold their breath in packed theaters. "This is Dwayne Johnson," he said flatly. "And you're calling to schedule a walkthrough of a home that won't be for sale." Another pause, this one sharper. Then, Mr. Johnson, this is Alan Reese from Northern Pacific Bank's Asset Recovery Team. I didn't realize—" "Yeah," Dwayne cut in. "I get that a lot. Now listen closely, Alan. You're not stepping foot on this property tomorrow or ever. You're going to take this account off the foreclosure list by end of day. Clear?" "I'm afraid it's not that simple." "I know how this works," Dwayne snapped. "I know how you bundle and sell off risk like it's lunch meat. I know how these houses are auctioned without blinking because it's numbers to you. But this isn't numbers. This is June Peterson. She's a human being, and she's going to stay in this home. She's behind 6 months. There's protocol?" "Forget protocol. I'm offering to buy the note. Full amount. No negotiation. I'll wire it in the morning." The line went quiet again. Dwayne's fingers were curled tightly around the receiver. "You want to liquidate the debt?" Reese asked carefully. "I want to erase the debt," Dwayne replied. "Then I want a written confirmation that she owns this home free and clear. Not a line of fine print. Not a leaseback. Ownership." Reese exhaled slowly. "That's highly unusual." "I'm highly unusual," Dwayne said. "Sir, you realize that to liquidate the asset in full—" "You have until noon tomorrow," Dwayne interrupted. "After that, this goes public. Not just this property, Alan. I've got a list of every foreclosure notice your bank has served in the last 60 days. You want me to go live with that on my socials tomorrow morning?" A beat. Then another voice entered the conversation, faintly. Someone on speaker in Reese's office whispering urgently. Dwayne listened. "Mr. Johnson," Reese finally said. "Let's discuss terms." Dwayne hung up. He turned back to June, who was now watching him like he'd just tamed a lion in her living room. "You threatened the bank?" she asked, half shocked, half delighted. "I negotiated," he said with a grin. "Aggressively." She looked like she wanted to say something more, but the emotion was already catching in her throat. She reached for a paper towel, dabbing her eyes. "That's not going to solve everything," she whispered. "No," he said gently, stepping toward her. "But it's going to solve this." That night, the air in the house felt different. Lighter, but pulsing. With energy. Dwayne sat in the small spare bedroom, a place that hadn't changed since he was 12. The faded Star Wars poster was still pinned crookedly on the wall, its edges curled like old paperbacks. The bed was too short for him now, his legs spilling off the edge, but the familiarity of it grounded him. He opened his laptop and pulled up a blank document. The title came to him immediately. Project Groundwork. He started typing. Mission: to provide direct support to elderly women in financial crisis across underserved communities, beginning with housing relief and evolving into national policy advocacy. It wasn't just about one house. It was about legacy, about repairing the system that let June fall through the cracks. He worked late into the night, crafting proposals, pulling contacts from his mental Rolodex. Agents, CEOs, foundation heads, former athletes. He'd built his entire life on persistence, on grinding past no. And this? This was his next match. But even as he outlined the framework, his thoughts kept drifting back to June. To the way she'd laughed when he asked about cinnamon pork chops. To how she still moved like someone trying not to take up too much space in a world that had forgotten her. The next morning, he was up at dawn. The bank had already called back, as promised. Wire instructions were sent. Documents would follow. June's house was off the auction block. By the time he returned from the call, June was outside tending to her struggling rose bushes. Her hands were in the soil, gloves on, back bent in a posture of someone who found peace in small rituals. He crouched beside her. "You should have told me," she shrugged. "I figured you had enough to carry without worrying about some old woman with overdue bills." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not some old woman. You're my family." She gave him a look, one of those long, quiet glances that said more than words ever could. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the morning air. "Mr. Johnson." They both looked up. A woman with a microphone and a cameraman were standing at the edge of the yard, eyes wide. "Sorry to intrude. I'm with Bay Area Now. We heard rumors you were here. Is it true you helped save this woman's home?" Dwayne stood slowly. The moment had come faster than he expected. "I'm not giving a press conference," he said, hands on his hips. "But yeah, I helped her." The reporter lowered her mic. "Do you mind if we ask why?" He looked at June, then back at the camera. "Because she helped me," he said simply, "when no one else could. And because this shouldn't be happening to anyone. Not her. Not anybody." The camera was still rolling. But Dwayne wasn't performing. He was speaking to someone far beyond the lens. "I'm launching something," he continued. "It's called Project Groundwork. And it starts with this street, this house, this woman." That night, the story broke nationally. Video clips spread like wildfire. Headlines flooded Twitter and Instagram. The Rock saves childhood nanny from losing her home. From wrestling ring to real hero, Dwayne Johnson declares war on elder poverty. But with the praise came pressure and scrutiny. Emails poured in, people begging for help, others skeptical, some accusing him of using a private moment for clout. And then came the challenge he didn't expect. A live interview request from Hardline America, a high-profile primetime segment notorious for grilling celebrities who claim to be solving problems. His team warned him off it. "They'll twist your words. You don't owe anyone a public debate." But Dwayne looked at the screen, at June smiling beside her freshly repainted front door, and made his choice. "I'm going on," he said. His manager blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah," he said, eyes burning with resolve. "It's time to see if the rest of the country wants change, or just a headline." The next night, under hot studio lights and in front of millions of viewers, Dwayne Johnson took his seat across from the show's host. The red light above the camera turned on, and the host leaned forward, smiling sharply. "So, Dwayne, let's talk about your so-called rescue mission. Are you a hero, or just another millionaire playing savior for clicks?" And suddenly this fight wasn't just personal, it was national. Would the world stand behind his mission, or tear it apart before it could even begin? The air in the studio was cold, deliberately so. Bright overhead lights threw a sterile glow over the polished desk, the reflective floor, and the host's carefully neutral expression. Dwayne sat stone still in the guest chair, one leg planted, one foot braced against the floor. Not tensed, not defensive. Just ready. Across from him, Chase Wren leaned in. Host of Hardline America, he was the kind of man who built his career, skewering the good intentions of others. Dressed in a Navy suit, his every word was calculated, his delivery honed for maximum tension. His smile didn't touch his eyes. "We're here tonight with actor and former WWE superstar Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson," Wren began, addressing the camera, "who recently made headlines for stopping the foreclosure of an elderly woman's home in Hayward, California." Dwayne didn't blink, didn't smile, just nodded. "Mr. Johnson," Wren continued, turning back to him, "your gesture has been called noble. It's also been called performative. What do you say to those who think this is all just publicity?" Dwayne leaned forward, forearms resting on the table. His voice was quiet, grounded. "If I wanted good press, I could have posed with puppies and called it a day." A low ripple of laughter came from the control room, but Wren didn't smile. "I didn't do this for cameras," Dwayne continued. "I did it because the woman who once took care of me, fed me, looked after me when my mom couldn't, was about to lose her home. And she's not the only one. That's the point." "But why now?" Wren pressed. "Why not 10 years ago? Why not last month?" Dwayne didn't look away. "Because I was busy thinking someone else would fix it. Someone with more time, more expertise. But then I looked into her eyes and realized there is no one else. Not unless we choose to be." Wren sat back, adjusting his mic. "All right," he said smoothly. "So you saved one woman's house. Good story. You're launching a program. Great branding. But tell me this, do you really think you can solve elder poverty with a few donations and some emotional appeals?" "No," Dwayne said simply. "But we can start there." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "And I didn't ask for branding," he added. "I asked for action. I've already wired funds to pay off 15 other homes this week. Quietly. No press, no cameras, but I'm not the solution. The solution is all of us, changing how we treat our elders, starting with housing and moving to policy, support services, and visibility." Wren smiled again, this time with teeth. "Sounds idealistic. But you're not a policymaker, Mr. Johnson. You're an entertainer." Dwayne gave him a tight smile. "And you're a guy with a camera and a teleprompter. So what?" The tension shifted. For a moment, even Wren didn't have a comeback. Dwayne leaned in slightly. "Look, every time someone tries to change something, there's always someone asking if they're qualified, if they're the right person, if they've earned the right. I get it. I've been underestimated my whole life. But I'm not here for approval. I'm here to move the damn needle." The host adjusted his notes. "Let's talk specifics. This project groundwork. What's your plan beyond writing checks?" Dwayne nodded. "We're launching regional hubs, staffed with advocates and volunteers. First in Hayward, then Miami, then Detroit, then rural areas where the need is just as big. We've already partnered with legal teams for foreclosure defense and seniors' rights. Phase 2, workforce transition support, medical cost assistance, all of it designed for dignity, not pity." Wren raised an eyebrow. "You're bankrolling this yourself?" "To start," Dwayne said. "But this isn't just mine. I've already had 5 corporations call to match my funds. Athletes, musicians, veterans. People are stepping up." "Even so," Wren said, voice dipping with that trademark skepticism, "isn't this just putting a Band-Aid on a broken system?" Dwayne's gaze turned sharp. "Tell that to the woman who gets to sleep in her own bed tonight." The camera lingered on him. Strong, steady, unapologetic. Then Wren looked into the lens, addressing viewers directly. You heard it here. Dwayne Johnson says he's building something bigger than Hollywood. Something grassroots. Something real. A beat. Will it work? Time will tell. The broadcast faded to commercial. The studio lights dimmed slightly. Ren stood and extended a hand. Not bad, he said quietly. You handled the heat. Dwayne shook it, his grip firm. That wasn't heat. Backstage, his publicist Claire was already in motion. That clip's going viral in 10 countries, she said, showing him her phone. But we've got something else. She handed over a tablet. It showed a video, a compilation of elderly women across the country, each holding handwritten signs, "We are not invisible." I am June. Thank you, Dwayne. Project Groundwork matters. Dwayne swallowed hard. Where did this come from? A woman in Atlanta started it. One of the houses you paid off anonymously. It's snowballing. People are starting to see them, Dwayne. But then her face changed. A flicker of worry. There's one more thing, Claire said. She pulled up a new headline from a political blog. Rock's rescue. A threat to the system? Below it, leaked memos. Internal. Emails from banks and property firms. Conversations about containing the narrative and protecting interests. Warnings that his visibility was creating precedent. They're scared, Claire said quietly. You've kicked a beehive. Dwayne scrolled through the documents. One line caught his eye. If we allow Johnson to become the face of housing reform, we lose control of the optics, and the public pressure will be relentless. He looked up. Good. Claire hesitated. They won't just roll over. There's talk of legal pushback, attempts to discredit you, digging into your past. They want to fight dirty. Dwayne's voice didn't waver. Then they picked the wrong guy. That night, he returned to June's. She was watching the interview on a small TV, wiping her eyes with a napkin. You didn't back down, she whispered. I never will. But just as he knelt beside her, taking her hand, a knock came at the door again. This time, it wasn't a bank agent. It was a man in a government suit. No briefcase, just a folder in hand. He looked at Dwayne with guarded formality. I'm with the State Housing Authority, the man said. We need to talk about a formal investigation into your recent acquisitions. Dwayne stood slowly. And what exactly are you investigating? The man held out the folder. Allegations of inappropriate financial intervention. Some are saying you used coercion against a lending institution. There's pressure coming from very high up. You've rattled something you weren't supposed to. Dwayne looked down at the folder. Then back up. I'm just getting started. The folder was thick, too thick for comfort. Dwayne turned it over in his hands, its matte surface warm from the man's grip. The seal of the State Housing Authority was stamped on the front in dry black ink, as lifeless as the eyes of the man who handed it over. Behind him, June hovered in the doorway, her hands wringing the hem of her sweater. The kitchen light flickered softly above her, casting uneven shadows across the room. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound for several long seconds. Can we sit? Dwayne asked finally, stepping aside. The man nodded, his movements clipped and bureaucratic, like someone trained to take up as little emotional space as possible. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Dwayne leaned forward, thick arms resting on the scarred wood, while the man, Agent Lee, he introduced himself, opened the folder with a studied calm, as if he wasn't about to throw gasoline on a house already smoldering with tension. This isn't a criminal investigation. Not yet, Lee said. But there are allegations being reviewed by the Oversight Committee. Dwayne narrowed his eyes. Allegations from who? Lee flipped a few pages. A coalition of housing and financial groups. Anonymous whistleblowers. The complaint centers around coercive influence. Your use of celebrity status to apply pressure. To lending institutions, possibly outside of proper channels. I offered to buy back mortgages. Full value, Dwayne said, jaw tight. No threats, No shortcuts. Lee's tone was dry. You also told a bank representative they'd be seeing their name on your social feeds if they didn't cancel. A foreclosure. That wasn't a threat, Dwayne said. That was a promise. Lee didn't react. Intent doesn't always outweigh impact. Behind them, June spoke for the first time. Her voice was small, tired. He saved my home. Lee turned toward her. Ma'am, no one is accusing you of wrongdoing. This is about policy integrity, oversight. When someone with Mr. Johnson's reach starts reshaping the market, even with good intentions, it triggers risk signals. Risk to who? She asked. He hesitated, then said, to the system itself. And there it was. Naked truth in 3 quiet words. Dwayne leaned back. So the problem isn't what I did. It's that I made it public. Lee didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. Dwayne stood, pushing away from the table. He moved to the window, arms crossed over his chest, watching the sleepy neighborhood bathed in late evening light. The wind stirred the eucalyptus trees out front, their leaves whispering secrets too old for men in suits to hear. Let me ask you something, Dwayne said without turning around. If I hadn't gone public, if I had just quietly paid off June's house, never said a word, would you be here right now? Lee didn't respond. Exactly, Dwayne said. So don't pretend this is about rules. It's about control. Lee finally sighed, as if the weight of the institution he represented had started to crack the shell of neutrality. You're not wrong, he admitted. But control is how systems maintain stability. Dwayne turned. Stability for who? Because for people like June, the only thing stable is the struggle. Lee closed the folder. I didn't come here to shut you down. I came to warn you. You've poked a nest full of power brokers with deep pockets and deeper friends. They're going to come at you sideways. Through the press, through your sponsors, your reputation. I'm not afraid of bad press, Dwayne said. You should be afraid of distraction, Lee replied, because they'll use every second you spend defending yourself to derail what you're trying to build. A long pause settled in the room, the kind that carries real gravity. What do they want? Dwayne asked. To make you back down. Quietly. Shift focus. Announce a change in direction. Let the fire die down. Dwayne laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. That's not happening? Lee stood, smoothing his coat. Then you'd better build fast, before they build walls higher than you can climb. He left without another word. The silence that followed was suffocating. June walked up behind Dwayne, gently touching his elbow. You don't have to fight this alone. I'm not, he said, placing his hand over hers. But truthfully, a sliver of doubt had wormed its way into his thoughts. They weren't just fighting the banks now. They were up against a system designed to outlast men like him. A system that fed on silence and complexity, that would use rules and regulations, like weapons, and it wouldn't play fair. The next morning, headlines had already started to shift. Project Groundwork or Project Grandstand? Experts question. Dwayne Johnson's financial crusade is the rock punching above his weight in housing reform? Celebrity overreach. What happens when actors try to act as lawmakers? Dwayne stood in front of the mirror, buttoning his shirt, each movement slow and methodical. He felt the tension coiling beneath his skin, the old pre-fight adrenaline. Not for a match in the ring, for something bigger, something deeper. His phone buzzed. Claire again. You've got a request for a town hall, she said. Bayview Community Center, San Francisco. Tonight. They want to hear from you directly. See if you're for real. Said it, he said. And one more thing. Claire added. There's a leak. Someone's planning to bring up that thing in Miami. The zoning deal. They're calling it a conflict of interest. Dwayne didn't flinch. It wasn't. I know, but they'll spin it like it was. Let them try. By that evening, the Bayview Community Center was packed wall to wall, folding chairs crammed shoulder to shoulder. Local families, seniors, activists, skeptics, and in the back, cameras, quiet ones, predators watching for weakness. Dwayne walked onto the small stage. No script, no teleprompter. He took a breath. "Let's be real," he began. "I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert. I'm a kid who grew up poor, watched his mom cry over bills, and slept in strangers' basements more than once. I've known what it feels like to be invisible." He paused, scanning the room. June Peterson isn't just one person. She's thousands, tens of thousands, women who sacrificed, who held up families and neighborhoods, who ended up alone, carrying the weight of a country that forgot them. There was a murmur of agreement, nods, a few tears. "I don't have all the answers, but I have a platform. I have money. I have stubbornness. And I'm not going to stop until this fight isn't mine alone, but ours." A hand shot up. A woman in the front row. Middle-aged, sharp eyes, clipboard on her lap. "You know they're coming for you, right?" she said. "The politicians, the developers, the people who profit off these evictions. You ready for that kind of war?" Dwayne met her gaze. "I was born for it." But even as applause broke out, as people stood and cheered, he felt the pressure building like tectonic plates beneath the surface, because somewhere, behind closed doors, the system was preparing its next move. And the closer he got to changing the game, the more ruthless it would become. The question wasn't if they'd come for him. It was how far they'd go, and what it might cost him to keep going. The boardroom smelled of cologne, old money, and fear. Dwayne sat at the far end of the polished walnut table, suit jacket slung over the back of his chair, shirt sleeves rolled up, forearms resting in. Front of him like twin slabs of granite. Across from him sat 6 men and 2 women, executives, lobbyists, and representatives from the National Housing Finance Council. Some avoided eye contact. A few didn't bother hiding their disdain. This wasn't a public forum. No cameras. No press. This was where real deals were made, or crushed. "You've disrupted a billion-dollar pipeline," one of the men said. Older, expensive watch. Thin, well-manicured hands steepled under his chin. "Whatever your intentions, you've created instability." Dwayne didn't flinch. "You mean accountability? You're playing with a fragile economy," a woman added. "When celebrities start unilaterally modifying housing trends, investors panic. Banks pull out. Local economies suffer." "Local economies suffer," Dwayne said, voice like a slow-building storm. "When people are thrown out of their homes in winter. When women like June are told they don't matter. That their lifetime of work and sacrifice has no value unless it's wrapped in ROI and quarterly projections." He slid a folder across the table. Thick. Tabbed. "What's this?" the man asked, frowning. "Proof," Dwayne said, "of funds misappropriated under federal housing assistance programs. Dozens of cases. Ghost contracts. You've been bleeding communities dry for years and calling it market fluctuation." The man snorted. "Where did you get this?" "I have friends," Dwayne replied, "and lawyers. The kind who read fine print like scripture." A tense silence followed. "Look," Dwayne said, standing now, "you're not all villains, but you're part of a machine that's forgotten the human beings inside it. Project Groundwork isn't going anywhere. In fact, we're expanding. 5 more states next month. You can fight me, discredit me, or you can help me. But one way or another, this changes now." He grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. "You want to sue me?" he added, looking back. "Get in line. You want to work with me? My number hasn't changed." And then he was gone. Outside, the city hummed under a gray sky. Rain hadn't started yet, but it hung in the air, heavy and expectant. Claire waited at the curb, phone pressed to her ear, pacing. When she saw him, she ended the call. "You're trending again. But it's good this time." "I'm tired of trending," Dwayne said, tugging at his sleeves. "You won," she said softly. He shook his head. "Not yet. But we're turning the tide." Claire handed him her phone. A live video feed played. A Project Groundwork rally in Detroit. Hundreds gathered. Signs waved. Homes, not headlines. Elders are the foundation. "We stand with June." A choir of retired women sang on stage, their voices rising above the crowd. Not polished, not perfect, but powerful. Joyful, Claire swallowed. "It's happening, Dwayne. They're seeing it now." He smiled, tired but real. That weekend, he flew back to Hayward. No red carpets, no press, just a quiet return to June's house, now freshly painted with new shutters and a ramp. Installed out front, a small plaque by the door read, "In honor of June Peterson, the first foundation stone." She met him on the porch, her cane tucked in one hand, a thermos of sweet tea in the other. "Took you long enough," she teased. "Air traffic," he grinned. "And saving the world's harder than advertised." They sat on the porch swing together as the sun dipped behind the houses, painting the sky in molten gold. The scent of jasmine floated from her garden. Neighborhood kids played down the street, their laughter ringing through the dusk. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then June said quietly, "I got letters." He turned toward her. "From women in Alabama, Pennsylvania, even Alaska. They wrote to thank me for being brave. But I wasn't brave. I was just surviving. You gave them a reason to believe again." Dwayne looked down at his hands, rougher now than they used to be, more calloused, but steadier. "I didn't know what I was doing at first," he admitted. "I just wanted to fix what was broken. But I think maybe the fixing isn't the point. Maybe it's the seeing." "Seeing us," June said. "Seeing you," he corrected. June reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a tiny folded piece of paper. "I wrote something," she said. "Before all this, before the cameras, just something I wanted to say in case I never saw you again." She handed it to him. Dwayne unfolded the note carefully. The handwriting was small, a little shaky, but still elegant. "Dewey, if you ever come back here, and I'm gone, I want you to remember that you were always loved, always watched over. Not just by me, but by this whole place. You were never alone. Keep walking tall. June." He folded the note slowly, tucked it into his jacket pocket. Words caught in his throat like stones. "I'm glad you're still here," he said. "So am I," she whispered. "So are a lot of people now." Months later, Project Groundwork opened its first national headquarters, a restored train depot turned community hub, staffed with social workers, lawyers, and volunteers. Dwayne didn't give a speech at the ribbon cutting. Instead, June did. With a cane in one hand and the microphone in the other, she looked out over the crowd. "I'm not special," she said. "I'm just visible now." And as the crowd erupted in cheers, Dwayne watched from the side, hands in his pockets, smiling as tears burned behind his eyes. Change didn't happen overnight. It came in waves. It came in city council meetings, late night, phone calls, broken systems patched together one piece at a time. It came in eviction notices canceled, in hot meals delivered, in mortgages renegotiated not out of mercy, but policy. Project Groundwork grew from a gesture to a movement, from one man to millions. It became something bigger than Dwayne, bigger than June. It became a mirror held up to a nation, asking one simple question: are we still taking care of the people who once took care of us? And across the country, more and more people began answering, yes. Back in Hayward, the porch swing creaked gently as the night settled in. June leaned against Dwayne's shoulder, sipping tea. Didn't think I'd live to see the world. Start changing, she murmured. Maybe it just needed a reminder, he said. She smiled. You were mine. The stars blinked awake above them, one by one, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a promise.